and welcome. It's Monday here on YouTube, and I'm Cassidy Cash. This is the show where we take a look at Shakespeare's weird words. This is a show to help you access and enjoy the plays of William Shakespeare by explaining some of the really old and outdated phrases that he uses in his works so that they make sense, and you can finally enjoy some of the truly awesome stories by William Shakespeare. This week, we're taking a look at the word hugger-mugger. In Hamlet, Act 4, Scene 5, Claudius says, "Thick and unwholesome in their thoughts and whispers for good Polonius' death, and we have done but greenly in hugger-mugger to inter him." It seems like such an odd word. You're greenly what now and why? And I get death and thoughts and whispers and even inter. I'm following you. Guy died. We buried him, but we buried him hugger-mugger? What? Shakespeare, what does this phrase mean? If you're confused by the phrase hugger-mugger and why Claudius is messing up this seemingly serious speech with a silly phrase like hugger-mugger, well, I have an explanation for you today. So let's look at the history. The phrase hugger-mugger is what's called a Britishism, along with phrases like cuppa or bangers and mash, or if you have ever hung out with someone from Britain and they say, "I'm chuffed to bits." I know that confused the mess out of me the first time someone said that. You're what to bits? Are you happy? Are you sad? What in the world? Exploring chuffed is for another episode. But along with these very, very British phrases, hugger-mugger is also a Britishism. It is something that only makes sense if you're British. The only difference between hugger-mugger and some of the other Britishisms I just mentioned is that hugger-mugger is really old, as in it was hugely popular for Tudor England and really hasn't been used much since then. There is one website I found that claimed the phrase hugger-mugger is trying to make a comeback here in the 21st century, being used by the New York Times 5 different times since 2010. I'll link you to that blog in the show notes below this video so you can find out some of the more modern references to hugger-mugger. But the OED lists the last known reference to hugger-mugger from 1874. So it really isn't a very popular word for modern times. Nevertheless, the wide popularity of the phrase for Tudor England is why it shows up in Shakespeare's plays without Claudius even batting an eye. There's another colloquial phrase for you. While he's talking about Polonius' death. The earliest known uses of hugger-mugger is in John Skelton's play Magnificence, which was presented at Henry VIII's court in 1519. He says, "Thus is the talking of one and of other, as men dare speak it hugger-mugger." Thomas More used the herker-moker spelling in 1529, and hugger-mugger is a combined word apparently put together for humanity's propensity for rhyming words and enjoying the fact that hugger-mugger rolled off the tongue, kind of like okie dokie or all righty anyway. Unlike our okie dokie counterpart there, hugger and mugger both come from Middle English, and they both mean concealment or secrecy. Considering the general reputation of Tudor England for all things clandestine, secret, coded messages, spies, and other sorts of things we do by night, it's not surprising that the phrase meaning for concealment meant it was so popular. Hugger was used by itself in 1576 to also mean concealment. Hugger-mugger appears to be a spelling variant of other phrases like hoder-motor, which was also used to mean secrecy or concealment. This hoder-motor phrase was actually used in the 15th century by the Paston Letters. If you are not familiar with the Paston Letters, we have a podcast episode about those on That Shakespeare Life. I'll link you to what those are. But in those letters from 1461, there's a quote that says, "He and his wife and other have blaveried here of my kindred in hoder motor." Me reading my 15th century English is still a work in progress. But the hoder motor phrase there shows that it was used in the 15th century. There are a few dictionaries that say hugger-mugger developed as someone who cuddles up to you and then pickpockets from you. So they hug you and then they mug you. I can't confirm this definition. It does seem to make sense at face value, but I'm not sure that would have been the way Tudor England came about the definition of that phrase. Instead, it seems that hugger-mugger was actually what's called a reduplicated word. And essentially, English hadn't developed all of its definitions and rules about what letters go where. And we certainly didn't have standardized spelling for saying things like, well, this word is always spelled this way. That didn't exist yet. It was still being developed as far as the English language in terms of its growing and becoming a language. So for Tudor England and for William Shakespeare, if you could come close to what you were trying to say in your spelling or your pronunciation such that the person you're talking to or writing to understood you, then that was good enough. And so that's why hugger-mugger becomes this reduplicated word. Basically, there are similar phrases to hoder-moder or hucker-mucker that people made up. And because it was close enough and in context, they could understand what you were saying, the new phrases stuck and became their own word. Hugger-mugger is like that. That's it for this week. I'm Cassidy Cash, and I hope you learned something new about the Bard. Make sure to look right below this video for links to more history on hugger-mugger and the life of William Shakespeare, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.